How's it going, everybody? It's Warren, and today is the official launch day of Disney Plus and the official launch day of The Mandalorian Season 1, Episode 1. A lot of things happened in this episode, and you may have some questions, but don't worry, we're going to break it all down. I will be covering each episode of The Mandalorian, doing breakdowns and talking about ending explanations as well, so if you'd like to stay up to date on everything relating to The Mandalorian, be sure to subscribe to my channel. I'm also giving away an Xbox One or PS4. All you have to do to enter is subscribe with the notifications turned on, like this video, and comment down below. So we are finally introduced to The Mandalorian. So remember, this takes place after the fall of the Empire. So right now, the part of the galaxy that they're in is kind of a lawless state. So The Mandalorian starts off in a cantina where these two thugs are picking on this one guy, and then The Mandalorian enters. The thugs then start to mess with the bounty hunter, The Mandalorian, and of course, that does not go well. He takes out all of the thugs in a very awesome scene, but then he goes over to the guy that they were picking on. The guy thinks that the Mandalorian just wants some credits for saving his life, but of course he's actually a bounty hunter and he is the bounty. So he ends up taking the bounty back to his ship, and there's some really cool scenes that are involved here. His ship is on the ice and there's a giant sea monster that breaks through, and he bites the ship, keeping it from lifting off, and then the Mandalorian shocks him with his weapon. Then of course the bounty tries to escape, and then the Mandalorian puts him in frozen carbonite, which is obviously a huge flashback to episode 5 with Han Solo. So then he ultimately makes it back to Greef Karga, who is Carl Weathers' character, and he collects his bounty. And he wants more bounties from him, but he basically gives him some really low bounties. He says that the prize for the bounties isn't even enough to get fuel. So he ends up offering him another bounty, but there's a catch. There's no puck that tells you who the bounty is, there's no tracking number, there's nothing. He tells him that he has to go meet the person that has put out the bounty face to face. So the Mandalorian accepts the bounty, and he ends up making his way to the character known as the Client. When he gets to the Client's location, he has a chip that is scanned by a droid, the same one that was in Return of the Jedi. He makes his way into the room where the Client is, along with 4 stormtroopers. The stormtroopers are very beat up and they're very dirty because remember, there is no more Empire. However, the Client is wearing an Imperial insignia, implying that he may have been someone of high rank in the Imperial army before it got destroyed. And the stormtroopers that are with him were most likely men that served him that just followed him along after. We don't find out the name of the Client. It's probably going to be revealed later on. I wouldn't be surprised if he is an extremely important character that is connected to somebody from the old Star Wars series. We are then introduced to Dr. Pershing. He ends up giving the Mandalorian the tracker fob for the bounty. And then we hear an argument between him and the Client. Dr. Pershing says that the bounty needs to be returned alive. But then the Client says that you can bring the asset back dead, however the bounty will be much less. So the Mandalorian is giving the tracking fob, and that's pretty much all he gets for this bounty, besides the fact that the age of the asset is 50. Now, the payout for this bounty is Mandalorian steel Beskar. Now, Beskar steel is an extremely rare and durable steel only found on the planet Mandalore and its moon. The Client says that he believes that Beskar should belong with its people, the Mandalorians. We go on to learn from the woman in the armory that Mandalorian steel was stolen from the Mandalorians during the Purge. Now, they do not clarify what the Purge is, but there is a chance that they could be referring to the Jedi Purge. So the blacksmith melts down the metal and forges a shoulder plate for him. And as she's forging this shoulder plate, the Mandalorian starts to get flashbacks, and we find out that the Mandalorian was actually a foundling. We see flashbacks of the Clone Wars. We can see super battle droids kind of just destroying everything in the city and everyone, so we see the Mandalorian's parents hide him, and it's safe to assume that since he's a foundling, his parents are dead. So we get a little bit of the Mandalorian's origin story there. Also worth noting that we see the Mandalorian sign above the room. Now the sign is a mythosaur. Mythosaurs used to be creatures on Mandalore. However, the Mandalorians hunted them into extinction. So the skull of a mythosaur is now the symbol of the Mandalorians. So the Mandalorian eventually makes it on his way after he gets his shoulder piece, and he arrives at a planet where he is attacked by 2 blurgs. And this is actually a really cool scene because we get to see the Mandalorian use his flamethrower. The flamethrower is something that the Mandalorians would use against the Jedi because the Jedi cannot block fire, at least not with a lightsaber. Luckily, he is saved by their owner, who is Nick Nolte's character, I believe is pronounced Kuil. and he recognizes that he is a Mandalorian and wants to help him. After a scene of learning how to ride a blurg, they get to the destination of where the asset is. We learn that Quill is helping the Mandalorian because he wants these mercenaries off his planet so the planet can once again be at peace. He leaves him, and right before the Mandalorian is about to go down, he sees a bounty droid. This bounty droid is IG-11, voiced by the one and only Taika Waititi, the director of Thor Ragnarok. And he also plays Korg, of course. So IG-11 goes in and requests the asset. Obviously, they're not having this, so they open fire on IG-11 and he just goes to town. This was one of the best scenes in this episode. The way that IG-11 is able to attack, the way he twists and turns, was just absolutely awesome to watch. But IG-11 is kind of throwing off the Mandalorian's plan. So he jumps down and tries to talk to him, but ends up getting shot by him. Now, of course, it's revealed that he's a bounty hunter, and the two of them decide to team up. And this is where the best scene of this episode begins. They both start to take out a lot of guards until eventually they get to the door that they need to get through. The door doesn't open, and they end up getting cornered at the door. The Mandalorian has a plan until this massive turret shows up. So he tells IG-11 to go draw the fire away, and when he does, he ends up taking out the gunner of the turret. The Mandalorian then jumps in the turret and completely destroys everybody. Definitely the best scene of this episode. So they eventually get through the door, and after killing one straggler, they eventually find the asset. The tracker has led them to a tiny little pod. The Mandalorian opens it up, and IG-11 and the Mandalorian just stare at it. Then the Mandalorian says, "Wait, I thought they said 50 years old, as in the asset was supposed to be 50 years old." Then IG-11 says, "Species age differently. Perhaps it could live many centuries. Sadly, we'll never know." Then he points his blaster at the baby Yoda, and then the Mandalorian shoots him right in the back of the head. Now, of course, the biggest twist of this episode is that the asset is a baby Yoda. Now, for those of you who do not know, Yoda's species has actually never been revealed in Star Wars lore. However, we do know that the creature on the show is going to be referred to as the Being. Now, obviously seeing this young Yoda raises many questions. Is this young Yoda related to Yoda? And why does the client want this asset? Now, we do know that Palpatine is going to be returning in The Rise of Skywalker, which means that he is probably around during this time. And the client, since he was wearing an Imperial insignia and had stormtroopers with him, could most likely still be working for Palpatine. So maybe Yoda's species could carry an extreme amount of midichlorians. Maybe they view this young Yoda as a future powerful Jedi. And this could perhaps be why Dr. Pershing wants the asset alive, because he would like to study it, perhaps study its blood and see how many midichlorians it has. But the fact that it could be a future Jedi is perhaps why the client doesn't care if it comes back dead or alive. If you have your own theories, let me know down below, and let me know what you thought about The Mandalorian. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel and comment below so you can enter my giveaway for a chance to win an Xbox One or a PS4. As always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.